Hello, Alan, and hello, Annie.
Hi, Miss Ladini.
Now, we're going to read chapter 2 of Jane Eyre, which we started the other day. So it's a classic book, which means it's traditional. A lot of people have to read this at school when they are doing English literature, but they would have a more complicated version of the book. We have chosen an easy version for beginners. So it's called Jane Eyre, and it's written by Charlotte Bronte. So we are going to continue now with chapter 2. And Alan, would you read a very brief summary of what happened in chapter 1?
Okay. The novel opens on a November afternoon at Gateshead, the home of the wealthy Reed family. A young girl named Jane Eyre sits in the drawing room reading a book. Jane's aunt, Mrs. Reed, has forbidden her niece to play with her cousin, Eliza Georgiana. And the bullying, John doesn't like Jane for being a lowly orphan who is only allowed to live with the Reeds because of his mother's charity. John then hurls a book at the young girl, pushing her to the end of her patience. Jane finally erupts, and the two cousins fight. Mrs. Reed holds Jane responsible for the scuffle and sends her to the Red Room, the frightening chamber in which her Uncle Reed died as punishment. Oh my goodness.
Right, so the only unusual word I see here personally is the word scuffle. And scuffle is a way of fighting, right?
Yes.
So that is the only word I can see, which is a little different from normal. So Annie, can you be so kind as to start with chapter 2?
Okay, sure. A Lowood school. It was the month of January. I arrived at Lowood school at night. A servant took me up some stairs and into a big bedroom. There were many beds in the room. The girls in the beds were asleep. The servant took me to an empty bed. I put on my night clothes and I got into bed. Soon I was asleep too. I woke up very early. A loud bell was ringing. The bedroom was dark and cold. I watched the other girls. They washed in cold water and they dressed quickly.
So you can imagine in the original book, Charlotte will give lots of adjectives to describe the atmosphere in this horrible school where she has been sent. So Annie, now you can see a picture. What can we see in the picture?
In the picture, there are so many people there are doing something with their, what is that? I don't know, kind
Water.
of.
So like you were explaining in your reading, the girls are getting a quick wash in cold water. So
Okay.
here you can see large jugs of water, and they have bowls in which they get what we would call, Alan, maybe a cat lick. A cat lick is like a quick wash, like cats would do, no? Like this, quickly, no? So there's a slang word of saying cat lick, which is a quick wash. As the water's very cold and it's early in the morning, that's what the children. So Jane wakes up to her first morning in this very depressing, maybe, school where she has been sent. Right, Alan, it's your turn. Can you see, or do you want it bigger?
Alan, your turn.
Can you see the writing, Alan? Or is it not moved yet? There was a plain brown dress. There we are.
It's a plain brown dress next to my bed. I put on my
Right. So can you read that, Alan? There was a plain brown dress next to my bed. Off you go.
There was a plain dress next to my bed, and there was a pair of ugly, heavy shoes. I washed quickly. Then I put on my new clothes. I was very hungry. I followed the other girls down the stairs. We sat down at long tables in a large dining room. Our food was terrible. The food is bad again, one of the girls said. Stand up, a teacher shouted. Don't talk. We stood up. We did not speak. We walked into the big schoolroom and we sat down. There was about 80 girls in the schoolroom, and there were 4 classes. The oldest girls were in the 4th class, and I was in the 1st class. 4 teachers came into the room, and we began our lessons. The lessons were not interesting. First, we read some pages in a book. Then our teacher asked us questions about those pages.
Annie.
After 4 hours, we went outside. It was very cool. Very soon, a bell rang. Lesson started again. 3 weeks passed. One afternoon, the head teacher came into the schoolroom. The head teacher's name was Miss Temple. Mr. Brocklehurst was with her. We all stood up. I stood behind an older girl. I did not want Mr. Brocklehurst to see me. Mr. Brocklehurst walked slowly around the room. Everybody was very quiet. And then I dropped my book. Mr. Brocklehurst stopped walking. He looked at me.
So I think Jane is very unlucky, no? She's trying to not be noticed by Mr. Brocklehurst, but unfortunately she drops a book. And what happens next, Alan? Ah, the new girl.
Ah, the new girl, he said. Come here, Jane Eyre. Then he pointed at 2 of the older girls. You 2 girls, put Jane Eyre on that high chair, he said. Look at Jane Eyre, everybody, Mr. Brocklehurst said. This child is bad. She is a liar. She will be punished. Miss Temple teaches girls, do not talk to this child. Then he spoke to me again. Jane Eyre, you must stand up on that chair for 2 hours, he said. You are a bad girl. That evening I cried and cried, but Miss Temple was kind to me. You are a good pupil, Jane, she said, and you are not a bad girl. I am your friend, Jane. Thank you, Miss Temple, I said.
So can you imagine this situation? It must be horrible, no? All the school looking at you, and the word liar for me in English is very strong. If I call you a liar, it's very insulting. It's not like saying, oh, you told a lie. But if I say you're a liar, it's very strong. And I would not use that very freely in my English language. So she's called a liar in front of everybody. She's punished for 2 hours. So you can imagine how unhappy she must feel. Annie.
Lowood School was in an unhealthy place. The buildings were wet and cold. Mr. Brocklehurst owned the school. He was a rich man, but he did not buy warm clothes for us. And he did not buy good food for us. Everybody hated him. In the spring, many of the girls become sick. Some of them left the school. They never came back. Many of the girls died.
Oh,
That spring was a terrible time. We had no lessons. Miss Temple and the other teachers took care of the what?
Took care of the, off you go, Alan, of the sick pupils.
took
Took
care
care
of
of the
the
sick.
Lowood school. I took care of the sick pupils. Mr. Brocklehurst had to buy better food for us, and he had to buy warm clothes for us. Mr. Brocklehurst never came to the school. The next year, Lowood School moved to a better place. It was a healthier place. There were new schoolrooms, new bedrooms, and a new dining room. The new buildings were bright and clean. The teachers were happy. After that, I was happy at Lowood School too. I was a pupil at Lowood School for 6 years. Then I became a teacher. I was a teacher at the school for 2 years, but I never returned to Gateshead Hall, and the Reeds never wrote to me.
So she was at Gates Hall at the beginning of her life. So, Alan, what can you see in this picture, please? Who do you think this is in the picture, Alan?
Well, you can see these are the pupils sitting at their desks, hopefully quite listening attentively to their teacher, who's at the desk on a sort of a rostrum or whatever you want to call it, on a higher stage.
Yes.
But, yes, it's a typical of a schoolroom in that era.
So we imagine this is Jane when she becomes a teacher. So this picture is telling us the story of Jane when she finally finishes her studies and she becomes a teacher for 2 years at the Lowood School. And we can see how seriously she's dressed and the way that the children are dressed as well. Right, so that is the end of chapter 2. It wasn't too difficult either. It just wanted to explain that she stayed at the school for 6 years and then she finally became a teacher herself. So thank you, Alan and Annie, for reading. So next time we will read chapter 3 and let's see what happens to her. She doesn't have a very happy life. That is all I'm going to say. Okay then, toodaloo.
Okay, thank you.